The Innovators by Walter Isaacson. Ever since the publication of his Ben Franklin biography, Walter Isaacson has put himself on the map as a staple of what makes an incredible biographer. He's done Steve Jobs, Einstein, and Da Vinci. All to phenomenal acclaim and commercial success. He has been honored, actually this year, by President Biden with the National Humanities Medal. He's worked for Harvard University, where he graduated, Carnegie Institute for Science, the Rockefeller Foundation, and much more. Bottom line, we're looking at a very accomplished and well-educated man here, and he puts out a work now on how a group of hackers, geniuses, and geeks created the digital revolution. It is expected to be an overview of the history of computer science and the digital revolution. It did come out in 2014, and as you can imagine, with Moore's Law, which basically states that computer power doubles every 2 years on average, history has come much further than this with smartphones, virtual reality, cryptocurrency, the metaverse, and the like. But what's so special about this book? In this video, I'm going to go over my thoughts on it, things I found interesting, things I learned, things I liked, maybe things I wasn't so crazy about, and I'm also going to go over some standout quotes who I recommend this book to, and what books to maybe check out next. Just so you guys know, there are affiliate links in the description, and if you buy anything through those links, like maybe this book, then I get commission, which helps me build this channel and keep making these videos. You can also get them through my Amazon storefront. But welcome back to my channel. My name is Sam, and I want to make self-growth normal, because people shouldn't have to look this information up. It should just be mainstream knowledge. If you agree, then please make sure to smash that like button. It seems to explore the shaping of the digital revolution and how these minds used collaborative ethics to make it happen, rather than simply the history of the creation of its components, like the computer, the software, the microchip, video games, and what have you. Chapter 1 is Ada, Countess of Lovelace. Or I think Lovelace. This chapter was about a mathematician, and they praised this lady throughout the entire book. It seems like she gave birth to the whole thing. Literally, sort of. She was a mathematician known for her work on Charles Babbage's proposed mechanical general purpose computer called the analytical engine. By the way, believe it or not, this was the beginning of the 1800s. Isn't that crazy? But Isaacson, in this chapter, he talked about this in a way that made her work sound like it was like the Big Bang of computers. You may have heard of Lord Byron or Lady Byron. This was their daughter. And of course, I don't think anyone knows who she is. Of course, this chapter was the first I ever heard of her. He also kept mentioning the affair that she had with her tutor. I don't know why, but these people are hundreds of years ahead of their time. And I guess Isaacson really felt the need to just rub it in everybody's face that she had an affair with her tutor. Chapter 2 is the computer. This chapter went over what brought the previous one to the official creation of the computer. It was a lot to keep up with, and I have to admit, a lot of the book at some points was. The audiobook, after all, is 17 hours long, almost 3 times the length of what you'll see on average, but this one focused on John Vincent Adanasoff's quest to create the first automatic electronic digital computer with the help of graduate student Clifford Berry. Chapter 3 is programming. I have to say, this guy is really, he's really known for his biographies, but this book was, as a concept, was an adventurous swing. I'd say in the right direction. This is almost like the story of like how America was started, or the story of like the Civil War, or something that was really long that you had to learn about in history class. But it's about like the building blocks of the digital pocket machines we control and use to communicate with each other every day. It's fascinating to hear all of that together in one place. Chapter 4 is the transistor. The transistor to the digital age became what the steam engine was to the Industrial Revolution. The advent of transistors and the subsequent innovations that allowed them to be etched onto tiny microchips meant that processing power of thousands of ENIACs, if I even got that right, could be nestled inside the nose cone of rocket ships, in computers that could sit in your lap, in calculators that could fit in your pocket, and in handheld devices that could exchange information with any node or nook of a network planet. For anyone who doesn't know what all of that meant, because I kind of didn't, the transistor is a really badass and very important component to the digital revolution. With the transistor, the way it worked is they innovated it, then they produced it, and entrepreneurs conjured up new consumer markets so they could be sold at like humane prices. Something not many people seem to be able to figure out how to do nowadays, might I add. This happened to be around the time Elvis exploded in popularity, which made every kid and their mom, perhaps literally, want a radio. I have to say, something I was never crazy about with autobiographies like longer than 16 hours is usually that they have so many damn people involved in the full story that it's not always easy to keep up with the whole thing. Chapter 5 is the microchip. This book suffers from that tremendously, as anyone could expect. These innovations carried from prototype to prototype, and they were used in product to product in a way that complicated the hell out of this book. And I really can't blame the author for this. I mean, he's just doing his freaking job. Come on, guys, let Walter Isaacson do his job, okay? I can really only excuse this, by the way, with a few points and tips. 1, if you feel lost, look up the last name coupled with the name of what they were involved with. And 2, I found it easier to focus on what actually happened than on who did what. William Shockley, for example, was in much of this chapter, and Isaacson's storytelling skills painted a picture of this very strange, egocentric, and phenomenally intelligent man with uncanny ease. But the further I got into the book, the less I enjoyed learning about him, because the more I found out that he's actually like a racist, sort of sexist pig in a way. The list of inventions on his Wikipedia page is almost as long as the list of apartments available in Allentown, Pennsylvania is short. Chapter 6 is video games. Two cultures eventually agreed that computers are something that should be played with. They were the hardcore hackers in the hands-on imperative. They loved pranks and clever programming tricks. They loved toys and games, and they were the rebel entrepreneurs. They wanted to create a digital disruption of pinball games and stuff like that. This turned into the video game ultimately, which wasn't just an exciting slideshow, but an integral part of the lineage that later turned into today's personal computer. It also helped propagate the idea that computers should interact with people in real time, with digital interfaces and graphic displays. The way Isaacson talked about these guys, it wasn't rude, but it made them sound like the nerdiest nerds in the nerditude of nerdiverse. In other words, they were very nerdy. But chapter 7 is the internet. What's interesting about the internet is that it was built at an intersection between the military, universities, and private corporations. Very, very unexpected trio, right? It became the military academic industrial complex. This was contrary to my expectation, probably the least interesting chapter. I listened to the whole thing twice, and I don't know why that is. Chapter 8 is the personal computer. It's fascinating to me how much the personal computer had to do with psychedelic drugs. Something else about this book that made it a little bit less accessible to me than I was hoping is that there's a modest amount of fairly complicated computer and software like terminology that made it a little bit harder to follow. What surprised me about this was that I didn't get a lot out of it like I did out of the Steve Jobs biography. There were still some serious die-hard dreamers in this book. He acquired a faith in the power of computers to help people take control of their lives and form communities. If they could use computers as tools for personal empowerment and learning, ordinary folks could break free from the dominance of the military-industrial establishment. Chapter 9 is software. This was my favorite chapter, and the longest chapter. Here we enter Bill Gates, with a stunning introduction in the form of a brief description of his childhood and how his fascination with software came to be. The way people described him made him sound seriously competitive. And again, like, super nerd. This whole nerd-like demeanor and presentation I'm talking about, by the way, I think it's a good thing. These people shaped so much of today's world. It seems like because of Moore's law, the more time goes by, the more stuff happens in less time. Maybe that's why they call it Moore's law. I'm just kidding. It's named after a guy named Gary Moore from the 60s. People do say Moore's law is dead though because of something in quantum mechanics that I don't exactly understand called Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, but it's definitely an ongoing debate amongst experts. There's a lot of drama in this chapter. Oh my gosh, a lot of these people, it sounds like what it would be if like the Big Bang Theory characters were hyper audacious troublemakers. And, well, real. Some moments in this chapter made Steve Jobs sound kind of insufferable, but Steve Jobs was a million different things at different points in his life. Later in the chapter sort of spreads this focus onto the literal development of software. Bill Gates has a very mischievous sense of humor at times. For more of this, check out his book, How to Avoid a Climate Disaster. I was really happy that Bill Gates finally put out a book. But here's something he said to Steve Jobs that stood out. Well, Steve, I think there's more than one way of looking at it. I think it's more like we both had this rich neighbor named Xerox, and I broke into his house to steal the TV set and found out that you'd already stolen it. I don't know. I like Apple more than Microsoft, but I admire Bill Gates a little bit more than Steve Jobs. Why? Okay, let's not get sidetracked here, guys. All right, that is another video topic. Chapter 10 is online. As the internet goes through different cycles, it's been a platform for time-sharing, community, publishing, blogging, and social networking. There may come a time when the natural yearning that humans have for forging trusted communities, akin to corner bars, will assert itself, and the well of startups that incorporate its spirit will become the next hot innovation. Sometimes innovation involves recovering what has been lost. Chapter 11, the web. The journalist Justin Hall sounded so much more important in this chapter than I thought he would be. In fact, before checking out the Innovators, I'd never heard of him either. Him and so many people. Nonetheless, he was, what this guy was, he was a pioneer blogger. Pioneer is a big, big word, and one of my favorites, but it's a big word. It's not a big word literally, of course. I mean, there's only so much word you can get with 3 syllables. But when you hear that someone was a pioneer, that's pretty significant. These people did what they did well before there were laws, regulations, parameters, or really anything other than just infrastructure. And I'm not just talking about like the digital age, I'm talking about like business and politics and the military and everything. Exploration, sea exploration, sky exploration, science, psychology, medicine, everything, education. Not really anything other than infrastructure. And yet these people were the pioneers of it. The very fundamentals of what it means to be a blogger for this guy and how to blog. Not many people popularized it before him. I have to admit, like many people in this book, nonetheless, he still sounded pretty crazy in his own way. There's something about this, like Isaacson, like he knows how to add things that sound so random and specific, you can't possibly forget them. When Larry Page and Sergey Brin were given a check for $100,000 before setting up their first bank account, he added how they celebrated at Burger King and why they bought what they did on the menu. When Bill Gates bought his first Porsche, he has like a car collection, I think it was a 911, Isaacson mentioned that Gates went to the dealership later on to comment on how the top vehicle's speed was like 3 miles an hour less than what it said it was on the owner's manual or something. But like I said, it's so small and specific of a detail, and I found this to be something so easy to appreciate about the Innovators, obviously as long as it had everything else. It just adds a little bit of flavor to the book. And lastly, chapter 12 is Ada Forever. Remember Ada, the Countess of Lovelace from chapter 1? This chapter, the last one, talks about the difference between brains and computers and how Ada, Countess of Lovelace, would be so proud of everything that's changed since her time. You can really tell with this book and his biographies that Isaacson likes to push the envelope and do a little bit more than what he says he will. He'll tie ideas into like larger, more overarching concepts. It's something that you might see from a guy like Robert Greene. Steve Jobs brought together so much more than the biography of just the entrepreneur, but how he was responsible for the greatest intersection between science and culture that the world has ever known. Da Vinci dove into something like this, but many centuries earlier, as well as the unmatched mastery of several different skills that overlapped into each other across art and science. In the beginning of the book, the author disclosed that the main goal was to describe not just how all of this happened and who did it, but also basically the intangibles of it. How these people worked together, the motivations and the team dynamics behind closed doors. Aside from how cohesively he was able to lay that out by doing the first, the second, just wrapped it all up together and packaged it in the most impressive way I imagine the author could have managed to. I don't know if I was surprised about anything other than the concept of the book not being a biography, that is, because I think this is the only book he's ever put out that wasn't a biography. But I was definitely floored at how well he was able to do what he set out to do. To me, this seems like it will go down as a widely underrated piece in Isaacson's bibliography, but when people ask me about it, I will tell them it has my vote. I'm not sure what that vote is for, but I presume you understand what I'm saying. Maybe not, I don't know. Quotes. The company that he was about to found would transform a valley known for its apricot orchards into one famed for turning silicon into gold. He insisted somewhat contradictorily that there's only truly one real innovator of any device because there's only one light bulb that goes on in somebody's head. The creation of software was just as valuable as the creation of hardware. Billy von Meister is a terrific entrepreneur, but he didn't know how to stop entrepreneuring. For someone interested in the intersection of technology and business, Stanford was the place to be. Have a healthy disregard for the impossible. Direction 1. I recommend this book for anyone who wants to know more about the history of the digital revolution. Look no further, my friend. Seriously. Seriously, like the search is over. This book is really just it. Direction 2. If you like this book, I think you will love The Inevitable by Kevin Kelly about the 12 forces that shape the future. One of my absolute favorite books on technology in the future. The Innovators by Walter Isaacson. There's a link in the description if you guys want to check it out and read the reviews. That and all the other books that I mentioned in this video if you want to check those out too. If there are any other books that you guys want me to check out and review, please let me know in the comments below. Also let me know if you checked out this book and you liked it. But hey, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, because I don't get why people watch this far into my videos and they don't subscribe. But if you have subscribed, then you want to turn it up just a notch and turn on that notification bell to get a notification whenever I drop new videos. That would mean the world to me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. You can find me everywhere, and I will see you then.